Okay, real quick, there's a few things I want to go over. Pretty much for all of my processes, we've kind of already touched on it in the last project, where we're just going to continue to push darks darker and build up our lights, go into the nuance now. This is kind of an inherently messy process, which is really nice for capturing things quickly in terms of shape. Oftentimes when we're focusing on line, we're a little too focused on that one mark that we make. And with this, you can really get into those areas and capture something much quicker. And it also helps for people maybe who think in more shape-based versus linearly. A lot of people kind of are already naturally thinking linearly. Well, not naturally, because that's how you draw with a pencil, a graphite pencil. So most people are used to that. But I've found in the past that that can sometimes be a little too abstract, and you can kind of end up accidentally focusing on one area too much. This kind of gets to the point really quickly. I have a pretty good amount of mass going on. If you remember back to all of our previous projects, after the first day, all we really had was that block in, which is nice to take a lot of time on that. This process is pretty forgiving, and I just wanted to show you the next kind of couple of steps because they are a little bit different. So I have pretty much just the dark shape and the light shape. Some of this in here is from me not erasing around it, and some of it is just, when the kneaded eraser gets really dirty, it doesn't erase as well, which kind of works perfectly because it already feels a little bit like that texture of the crinkled paper. So you can use that to your advantage, definitely. So what I outlined it just so that it's separated for me visually from that background a little bit more, just so I keep those boundaries and don't lose them. I will eventually get rid of this one, definitely. I like this one, how subtle this is on this side. It's a little less subtle up there, but I might knock that down too. And as you go, you'll find maybe they get a little close and you can just lift off of the background just so it's a little bit lighter. Some people already have theirs lighter, some people have theirs darker. But what I would do now, get out my phone because I need to get, obviously I would prefer to work from life, but I don't have that, I don't have a cord long enough for that. So now I'm going to start looking, mostly the darks. I'm going to focus on putting in those darks more. The really, really deep creases. And you can think of those as, the reason they're so deep or dark is because they're nice and deep, almost like little caves in there. When you think about that and you understand that, it will prevent you from putting that dark anywhere else, because that dark shouldn't be anywhere else except the areas where it's going really deep. There's really dark creases. There's really sharp creases. So in this one, there's a lot of folding going on in here. I would mark that out. And just kind of getting closer. There's not really too much to worry about the exact accuracy. One, because these shapes are super complex. You just don't want, this half of the bag to feel larger than this half of the bag and you're squeezing it into the bottom. I would start to darken it and mark it out with the vine charcoal, and then as we go darker, moving into the compressed is fine. The only thing is, think of it, again, more like shapes and less like lines. Sometimes this will be fine because there will be like folds that are that thin where it's just a line, but try to minimize that because it kind of betrays everything you've already built into here, where we're just kind of focusing on shapes. So going in and instead of just drawing like that, allowing yourself to kind of scribble a little bit and build these shapes out. And then one of the things that's really nice is if you have a blending stump or, you know, just the paper towel, as we move forward, I'm doing this in kind of a pieced up way just for the sense of, for the purpose of demo, but I would probably focus putting in all these darks everywhere, making sure that's pretty much correct, and then move on to this step where I'm looking. You can see, maybe not in here, there's some areas in the dark that need to be a little lighter. Instead of erasing it, because if I erase it, I'm going to get all the way to this light, and they shouldn't be that light. If you remember the reflected light in the shadows, just removing it a little bit with the blending stump or the paper towel will help you focus on a little bit of that nuance in the shadows. Just following these shapes through. And then if you get too dark in there, going over it with a paintbrush, if you have one, will help to bring that back. You can see this is pretty saturated with charcoal right now. And that's generally how, you know, the relationship of this dark. I remember to keep the lighter areas that are within your shadows still darker than most of the areas in your light. Otherwise, it will just look like a bunch of shapes mixed together. So chasing those shapes, continuing to build that up. I'm going to go into pushing my darks a little bit later on in terms of the compressed charcoal. Still stay away from that as long as possible, just so you have a good base to build off of. And then, yeah, just focusing on shape. If it's going to get messy, don't freak out. I know that seems like the inclination. That is what's nice about working with the line, the block in the previous projects, is you feel like there's a little bit more progress sometimes, or rather that your progress won't be lost as easily. There were definitely parts in building up to here where I had something and then I almost lost all of it because of the, smudging the background. That's totally fine. We can always reclaim it. That's kind of the nice thing, is where previously you could make a line that was too dark and then you couldn't erase it at all. Because everything's already knocked down a couple of values, you don't really have to worry about that kind of mistake as much, as long as you kind of hold back on jumping directly into that dark charcoal. But it is a little more smushy and fluid, kind of, you'd think. So yeah, focusing on specific shapes. If you need to get up and get closer, because there are some things that are kind of confusing about what's overlapping sometimes, getting up and walking up to the still life will help you. Also, don't draw from this, but it might help everyone to take a photo from where you're sitting. Inevitably, because they're paper bags and there's going to be so many people in here, they will probably get moved around a little bit, and it's going to be really hard to get them perfectly scrunched back to the way they're supposed to be, but getting them as close as possible with multiple people's photographs will be a little easier if things do get out of whack. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this part. Focusing on your darks, building up your lights, and pushing things like we have already done, but focusing on shapes more than line.